So welcome to Civic Punks, and I'm here with my good friend Brenton Caffin. Well, first off, Brenton, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you?
Hello, everyone. Brenton Caffin. I am an Australian recovering public servant. A few of us around. Founder of co-founder of States of Change. Previously, also in Nesta Taxi, the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, and a few stints in government in between.
So, Brenton, what is something that you came across 10, 15 years ago that's really continued to shape your thinking even to this day?
So one book that I shaped my thinking, and I often refer it to other people to have a look at, is Reinventing Organizations by Frederic Laloux.
Okay.
So Frederic Laloux famously sort of documented a range of different organizational styles and gave them a sort of an organizing logic for sort of the Teal organization, if you've heard of, from holocracies. And so he looked at Zappos and Bertzorg and a bunch of others and sort of said, well, what are these sort of leaderless or flat sort of organizations? How do they operate versus sort of more traditional hierarchical structures? So I probably picked that up about 15 years ago, and it's been a sort of a constant question I've had in the back of my mind, how you can apply this in different contexts. I've set up a few organizations, so I've had to think about organizing principles from first principles, but also I've come into large bureaucracies and I've thought, to what extent can you bring some of these principles into large hierarchies? Spoiler alert, it's really hard. Because effectively what he says is, even if you're operating on a different logic, if your governance, CE, boards, ministers are operating on a different logic, they might let you be flat and flexible when times are good. When the proverbial hits the fan, they'll resort to so really, think about if you can build this into your organization right from the get-go. So from States of Change, we thought about that at board level, at team level, as much as we could.
So if you were to distill down, I mean, obviously read the book.
Yeah.
If you had to distill down sort of like to 2 or 3 key ideas that you bring forward. So one of them is the one you just mentioned around the governance above you will inevitably force its way onto you.
Yeah, it's the lowest common denominator. I think the other one is actually designing, where you can, design organizations that can allow it to follow its evolutionary purpose. So you might set up an organization, you think it's going to do one thing, but over time, as you engage with the rest of the world, you may find that new forms of value are created. And sometimes you get locked into a sort of well, this is the way we've always done it, or this is kind of what we're set to do. Whereas actually, I think, having the flexibility to actually sort of evolve becomes quite important. So when COVID hit for us, for example, with States of Change, we were able to sort of pivot quite quickly away from face-to-face workshops to running online global learning festivals.
Yeah, you guys pivoted fast.
Because actually we went back to what's our purpose.
Right.
Our purpose is to help public servants learn. This is a moment that requires, a bit of collective learning because we're all trying to work out what the hell we're doing. And so how we showed up actually changed, but our underlying sort of we followed kind of what our core evolutionary purpose was, rather than getting fixated on the particular sort of, method and means to achieve that.
So it's one thing with States of Change, very small organization full of people who are really on the same page in terms of forward thinking around organizational design.
Yeah.
How did you attempt to apply these thinking when you were in government?
Yeah. So I think for me, part of it is about having a really open dialogue about what our purpose is. So within that team, so I set up a strategy and policy team, brought a number of people in who had worked, some of them had worked inside government, some hadn't. Many of them had worked with government in one form or another, but we really tried to think about what was our relationship to the broader ecosystem, both the rest of the department, other departments. And so we just thought about what's our value add and how are we engaging with those different groups. But that was an ongoing dialogue within our team. It wasn't just a sort of a hierarchical, the sort of the manager at the top decides this is what our strategy is going to be. Everyone march this way.
Going back to sort of one of the themes you had mentioned before, it's just one thing for your team. How did you leverage these ideas in terms of your reporting up to your boss, for example, and your boss's boss?
It's hard. It's hard. And ultimately, I think a lot of leaders, particularly in large institutions, have got there because their worldview has worked for them. And so it's very, very tricky to try and, move them onto a new line around this stuff. At best, what you can do is you can demonstrate through your outputs that the way you're working is working for your team, and to be given enough kind of room to maneuver to keep doing what you're doing. And maybe over time they get curious and think about how they might sort of empower that in other parts of the organization.
then? Because it sounds like, okay, so inevitably, whether it's you or somewhere else in the system, you're going to have that transition point between how the bigger system works and how this new innovative space works. What helps you be that sort of interlocutor between those two different worlds?
I think, and I mean, look, this is one of the classic debates and conversations we've had with innovation labs, right, for the last 15,
I was just thinking that,
20 years, right? It's what's the relationship between the performance engine and the innovation engine, right? The performance engine, large part of the organization of our public sectors are designed to optimize for a given set of, writing instructions, and you optimize until the context moves, and then you actually need some space to think about what's the next or what's the new, and that's where the innovation engine kicks in. And so the relationship between these labs that are trying to uncover new ways of working, new policies, new services, new programs, and the kind of the sort of the integration with the BAU is a live conversation. And there's, depending what area you're in, there are lots of different ways you can do that. To my mind, I've always been interested in how do you have, secondees and things and people like that in the innovation engine with you. So it's not a kind of an us and them. It's a kind of, we've just created a space for a different, more fluid, experimental way of working. But ultimately, we're always thinking, how do the ideas that are being generated here, how might they one day find a home in the sort of the operational system?
Brenton, thank you so much.
Pleasure.